Hello and good morning. This is Lori Smith, and this is Coffee, Trauma, Surviving Abuse podcast. I'm just waking up. um, and yesterday, that was the case. I was sort of out of it yesterday, but I had a important message, and I thought, I'll start the podcast off with that because, I want people to understand, like, that I've been through a lot, and um, you know, I've my whole life was just that, and until I started making good decisions and getting myself to a better place. And so this is what I want to talk about today: making good decisions. And really, as a survivor of abuse or anybody who's, just dealt with, you know, sort of having a hard time in life, especially as a young person, like preteens, something in your childhood, something in our lives that for one reason or another causes us to make these really bad decisions. Really, whether it's crime, getting involved in crime. As a youth, I'm talking about, the very sort of important teen years where we're coming into our own, but we really aren't quite ready yet and quite there yet. And so there's this, horrible thing that takes place in most teenagers unless they really have a lot of good guidance and a lot of help, to get through it. That's why I wrote my book, La Vida Juvies, because I wanted people to sort of take a little bird's eye view into my teen years with my friends and what it's like for typical kids in my era to grow up, um, with really no parental guidance and no, some of my friends were not being abused, but the lack of parental guidance, the lack of parental care, and some of my friends are actually abused worse than me. And so, it was just a mix, right? And the choices that we made, and I'm really going to just today talk about the choices that I made. So, but La Vida Juvies that's my teen years with my friends, and I did change the names of the people in the book because I didn't think it would be right for me to put their real names in there, because I'm talking about a lot of criminal type activity, right? So I'm like, let's not get our friends busted. Actually, we were doing very minimal criminal stuff. We were just lashing out, basically. No, I don't think, I mean, there were a few of people in the group who went a little crazy and did some horrible things. But the rest of us were all trying to stay out of prison, out of the system. So it's like, that's what it comes down to, right? We got to make these choices. You got to make these decisions, right? So I'm having a coffee and I'm kicking back this morning, and I just woke up a little bit ago. And we got a heat index here in Calgary. It's going to be hot. I don't have air conditioning, so it's really, really going to be hot. So I have my balcony door open, and I rarely do because I've got allergies. But the the heat is going to be bad, and it's a little cooler this morning. So what I'm going to do is I'm just had my balcony door open for a little while to let some cool air in. But in the meantime, it's let a lot of noise in the background because I live downtown Calgary. It's very noisy. There's a lot of building projects going on, putting up high rises and stuff. So there's a lot of heavy equipment moving around down there. There's birds flying around. There's a car noise. So it will be maybe a little bit of background noise here. So that's generally the case in my podcasts anyway. Because my place is so hot, I have to have fans going. So, because there's no air conditioning. So, and it's hot. So it's like, you gotta do something, right? So I usually have one fan or two fans blowing, so you can always hear some sort of crap noise in the background. I'm really sorry about that, but it's just the way it is. And I can't afford a mic. Like, I could go buy a mic, but I'm not spending any money because, like, my situation is crap. I don't have a job. I've got no benefits except for I got a widow's survivor benefit, and that's all, and that's not much. So it's like it doesn't even pay half my rent. So it's like, you know, um, I'm not spending any money on buying mics and stuff like this, right? So I'm just doing this with a headset, and I hope you'll tune in and get something out of this morning. So we're talking about, making good decisions, and I was thinking about that because I thought, yesterday where I left off, talking about the abuse that I suffered, and um, just really painting a picture kind of, horrible stuff. Um, you know, uh, my brothers went on to kill themselves. They were drug users. Two of my brothers. Um, they were heavy duty drug users. I mean, lifelong drug users. And I've talked a lot about that, especially in my Born in Hell series, my video series. That's like a 27-hour video series, if you ever wanted to go watch that. Starting from when I was like 4, well, basically when I was born, but, I'm kind of talking about from where I became cognitive in a situation and what happened, in our family. So, but I do talk a lot about my brothers, because, I swore I would never do drugs because I saw the aftermath of what drugs did to my brothers. They were in their teens and, heading towards 20. When I was little, really little, my brother Howard was 7 years older than me. So when I was 4, he was 11. So when I was 5, he was 12. I mean, he was already a drug user at that point. My brother Rob was 13 years older than me. So when I was 4, he was 17. He was a heavy-duty drug user. He was a heroin user, heroin addict, and he was, they were both doing whatever kind of drugs they could get their hands on. It didn't matter what it was. They would take my mom's pills. My mom was on a lot of medication. My mom was very sick. You have to watch those videos. I got 27 hours worth. If you didn't want to read my books, there's a lot of information in my books. It's up to you. Those books are free if you want to read them. But the thing is I don't want to go back and recover all that. But the issue is my brothers were heavy-duty drug users. They grew up in the same home I did, right? They weren't doing well, you know what I mean? And my mama actually kind of allowed it, right? She allowed them to do drugs around the house because they were her protectors from my dad, right? So she was kind of like, okay, I'll turn a blind eye to your drug use as long as you stay here and keep your father away from me, right? Which is what they were doing, right? So they were trying to do, which they would get their ass beat because my dad was much bigger and stronger than them especially at that point. My dad was as a military man, right? He was an ex-military man. He was he was a tall, wasn't fat. He wasn't big and fat. He was tall and scrappy, and he was perfectly capable of taking on my brothers. And he used to just beat the shit out of them, They would try to protect my mom, and then they'd get their asses kicked, right? And he'd kick all 3 of their asses. I had 3 brothers that were living at home at the time. And, he was a violent man, right? That's what I'm trying to get across to you guys. And he was, he was horrible to my mother. And I don't blame her kind of in a way for doing that, even though she should have just got out. And that's the whole purpose of this whole thing of me doing that video series, was to explain all of that, right? That she actually was given the opportunity to get out several times, right? And turned it down, right? It's like people make these horrible decisions, right? And I just grew up watching all of this and being, abused myself. And I swore I'd never use drugs because my brother would, horrible things would happen to him, and he would overdose. And my brother Howard, and he would, be passed out in the living room with his pants undone, and his privates sticking out, and sandwich on the couch, or on the floor. He'd drop his sandwich and half of it would be on the floor, and I'm sitting there just looking at him, and I'm like, he's not gonna fucking make it, man, like look at him. And he'd be like totally overdosed from those drugs, and nobody would do anything. Nobody would say anything. My mom, we'd just walk right by him. I'd be looking at the sandwich going, Jesus, I wish I could have that sandwich. Right? Because we weren't allowed to have any meat. Like, me and my sister weren't allowed to have the meat, right? We weren't allowed to have sandwiches like that. We were only allowed to have peanut butter jelly, stuff like that. I'd be like looking at that thing. I'd be like, God, it's got lettuce and cheese and tomatoes on it. damn thing looks fucking good. But it was already on the half of it was on the floor, and I thought, I don't want to be eating something off like hair and crap off the floor, so I just blow it off. But as a memory that I have, it sticks in my mind because I was more worried about that fucking sandwich than I was my brother, who could have OD'd. He was ODing right there, but he did wake up out of it. But nobody gave a shit, right? My parents didn't care. Nobody cared. And I did, I don't want to go into too many details about, because I could talk all day on this stuff, but I've already done that with the 27-hour video project that I did, which is called Born in Hell. If you want to watch that, it's under my playlist on YouTube, Born in Hell playlist, and it's like 27 hours worth of me really just going into detail and not just talking through, but playing the parts of my mother at some points, and playing the parts of my dad at some points, so that you can see a little better picture of what was going on. So they did drugs. I swear I'd never do drugs, right? I was just like, I'm not going to be like my brothers, there's no way. I'm not going to do drugs, right? And then I started getting high at the age of 12 with my friends, just smoking pot, right? And it went from there, I started smoking a lot of pot, and, we had access to pot. There was lots of people around that were selling pot. And marijuana, who cares? People say, well, marijuana's not that big of a deal, and it's really not. Would I say it was a gateway drug for me? No. And the reason I say that is because I didn't use pot, I didn't smoke pot and then think, oh, I need something else, right? That was never the issue. Marijuana is actually not that big of a deal, right? But I needed to escape my pain from being abused, from living in this hellhole that I was living in. 12, 13, 14 years old, the only thing I could think of doing was doing crazy drugs, drugs that would just take you away, like really away, right? So I started to experiment with a lot of that stuff. And by the time I hit 15, I was a full-blown drug user. And, I'd just do speed and all kinds of stuff, and I was a speed addict, basically. And I just kept doing that, and I kept doing it, and I was using all sorts of drugs. And all sorts of hallucinogens, and all sorts of, not just mushrooms, but acid, all types of acid, and all sorts of things like that. My friends and I were just partying. That's all we were doing. Finally, I got a car at the age of 16. I saved up my money. I worked half of my senior year, saved up money, got a car, which was the worst thing I could ever do. And we were gone, and we were high, and we were partying, all of me, my friends, and myself, right? And for me, that was freedom from my abusers. People asked me why I didn't run away. I've had so many people ask me that, why didn't you run away? And, I knew the streets were not a good place, right? I knew that my chances on the streets wouldn't be very good, and I didn't want to end up in foster care, because I also knew kids who were in foster care who were abused. And I thought, man, at least I know my abusers, right? At least I know, when I go home, my mom's going to beat on me, but at least I know what's coming, right? Whereas on the streets, it was that not knowing who your next abuser is going to be, and what if I ended up in a horrible foster care system. And the issue is I knew in foster care that I wouldn't be able to, that I wouldn't do well, because I thought, the first fucking thing they're going to do is abuse me, because I didn't know how to behave. I couldn't properly behave around anybody. It was hard for me to keep a job. It was hard for me to do anything, because I wasn't brought up at all properly, right? And my attitude by the time I hit my teen years was, fuck you. Fuck the world, man. I was, I wasn't doing well. And so, I'd just tell my dad, my dad was like 6'2", 6'3", I think, somewhere in there. He might have been 6'4", but he was tall. And he was a big military man. He knew how to hurt people, right? He was trained how to hurt people. And so, he'd have me up against the wall, like shoving his fist into my ribs. I'm sure that's what broke my ribs. I'm sure of it, and my mom too, right? But he'd just be like digging his fist into my ribs, so I couldn't escape, right? No way I could get away from that, and the pain was intense. And he'd be like whipping off his belt. He's gonna beat me across the face with his belt buckle, right? That's what he used to like to do. And I'd just be sitting there looking at him, and I'd be like, fuck you. And I'd be flipping him off, and I'd be like, fuck you. That was my attitude, see. I knew if I went to, I'd be like, I hate you, right to his face, right? I didn't care. I think he's going to beat me anyway. I was like, what the hell? So my attitude was really bad, I mean, I ran from cops. I did all sorts of things. I just really couldn't handle. I didn't have a clue how to behave myself. You know what I'm saying? So I knew I'd get in trouble. I used to get in trouble in school. And I thought, no, it's at least I know who my abusers are, right? So this was the issue. And also because I was the youngest, so I wasn't there to protect any younger siblings, which I probably would have done if I had younger siblings, but I was the youngest. But I was kind of there to sort of keep an eye and protect my mother, and people would say, why would you do that, right? Your mother is the one who is your main abuser, who was your main abuser, and you would protect her after all the crap she did to you, right? All that horrible, horrible shit that she did to you. And it's like, yeah, because it's the right thing to do, right? Because my mom was an abuse victim as well, right? And it's the right thing to do to stand up, and I used to stand up against my dad abusing my brothers too, so it wasn't just my mom. My dad didn't really pick on my sister Kathy. She was out of the picture. She's like, my sister Kathy was non-existent actually. She's a real person. She's just never there. She made sure she was scarce. You know what I'm saying? Like she was never at home. And I don't blame her. She was gone, man. But if it was me, I would have took me with me, see? If I was her, I would have took me with her, right? To protect me. But she didn't give a shit about me, right? It's like, no, you take all the beatings, you take the shit, and that way I don't have to take it when I get home, right? So that's the way it was. So, anyway, I stuck around and I did protect my mom as best I could from my dad, which got me a lot of beatings. It got me a lot of trauma to my body. It put me on the outs with my dad, caused me to be a violent person as well, because I used to have to try to get my dad off of her, and I'd be like, just swinging and wailing at him and pulling at him, and he'd beat the shit out of me, and I didn't care. I'm like, you know what, fuck off, right? So yeah, I did a lot of drugs. I needed to escape in my mind, right? And be somebody else, because on those drugs, I could be somebody else when I was high. And I could be somebody who was tough. I could be somebody who was not going through all of that stuff. See? It was an escape. That's all it was. Even though in the back of my mind, obviously I knew that I was fucked. But the thing is it just took some of the pain away for a little while, right? Well, while I was high. So I stayed high for a long time. I stayed high until my 20s. And I decided to get off the drugs because my brother committed suicide. He was a drug addict, and he had tried to commit suicide several times before. That's why we know it was suicide. And my brother Rob, the one who sexually abused me. So he was a heavy-duty drug user, like I said, his whole life. He could not get off the drugs. Neither did my brother Howard ever get off the drugs. So he was 33 and I was 20, and he killed himself. And he was in Canada, I was in the States, and I didn't give a shit, really. I was like, whatever. He finally made it. Of course I felt kind of bad. The dude sexually abused me, raped me, sodomized me, and hurt me bad, and caused me to be barren, right? But, as a human being, I could not help but feel some tiny little thing that said, man, that's awful, right? But 99.9999% of me was like, fuck that, I don't care. The dude hurt me, man. Fuck that. You know what I mean? So I really kinda didn't care that he committed suicide. But I did see my own death in that, because I thought, I'm doing drugs, the same drugs he's doing pretty much, except for I'm not a junkie. I never shot anything up, but I was certainly snorting a lot of shit, and I was doing all kinds of other stuff too. You know, at some point I was like, I'm going to either end up dead in a drug overdose, or number two, I'm going to be killed in a drug deal, right? Or number three, at some point, something's going to happen, and maybe I'll end up in prison or something. You know what I mean? All these scenarios started to play out of what I could see my future, right? Because my brothers, I was sort of thinking, I'm heading the same way they are, right? Suicidal, drug addicted. What the hell kind of life is that, And I mean, I was just hitting my very early 20s actually. 20, 21, 22. And at that point I was using horrible drugs. Just, crystal meth and horrible, horrible shit. And I thought, you know what? I'm gonna die doing this shit. And I want something better. I started to realize, I wanted a normal life. I wanted to be able to date, and go out on a date, and meet my Mr. Right, and do things that normal people do, right? It just occurred to me that I'm like, wow, kind of after a summer of being beaten up by my friend's boyfriend, right? My friend's boyfriend was not only beating on her, he was beating on me because I was helping her, right? And I'm like, okay, I just grew up abused, and now I'm having to put up with this shit, from my friend's highly abusive, dangerous boyfriend. I'm like, what the fuck? I had a drug dealer hold a gun against my head as I was collateral, right? Until her boyfriend came back with the money. This guy was like a drug dealer, gun dealer guy. And, and I'm sitting on the couch and he's got a gun held to my head and he's like, well, as long as everything goes okay, I won't kill you guys. He's got a gun against my head. I'm like, just because I happened to go over to visit my friend that day, so I could get high, smoke up a doob, right? I'm like, what the fuck? I'm getting myself into some serious, horrible fucking things, you know what I mean? It's not even, these people they're my friends, and it's too dangerous to be around them, right? So, he did come and he did pay that guy, so that guy left, and I was like, thank God, and I really made a decision after a few beatings from that guy, her boyfriend, which, seriously, honest to God, this guy was nuts. And some horrible situations, which I did talk about in the Born in Hell series. I decided that I couldn't hang around him anymore, right? And I made a wise decision, because I'm like, you know what, I love my friend, but she wants to stay with him, she's pregnant, she's having a child, she had a child with him, and it's her life, and she's got to make her own decisions, And I have to make my decisions, and I'm going to end up dead from these fucking drugs. And my weight was down. I've always been kind of, I was always about 5'8", 5'7.5", 5'8", and tall and not heavy. Sometimes I was a little heavier, sometimes I was a little thinner, but on those drugs, my weight was down way, way, way too far down. I was down around 127 or 125. For that height, so I was kind of getting to be skin and bones. I was just doing drugs. I wasn't eating. Drugs were my food, right? I wasn't really eating. Just kind of just doing drugs. That's it. And I thought, I didn't really think, okay, look what I'm doing to myself, because I just grew up abused by these really horrible fucking people, my parents. And I thought, okay, yeah, I know why I'm doing this to myself, But the issue is I want something better, right? So I decided I decided I needed to get off the drugs. So we're talking about making good decisions here today. You're the only one who can make these decisions. Nobody can make them for you, right? Whatever you're doing, whatever I'm doing in my life that is detrimental to my life and causing me problems, Nobody can fix that but us, right? We have to make those decisions that says, you know what, I want a better life. You know what, I want to live. You know, first of all, I want to live, right? That's what we talked about yesterday. Second of all, I want a better life. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to do these drugs. I don't want to do this alcohol. I don't want to do this cycle of violence anymore, right? I don't want to do this cycle of self-harm anymore, right? We're the only ones that can make those decisions, right? There's nobody else can come along. As a matter of fact, I never really listened to anybody or good advice because nobody really tried to offer me too much good advice except for my friend's family. A friend of mine a different friend of mine, their family was really sweet to me, and they actually did a lot of nice things for me when I was growing up. And they actually tried to get me help a couple of times, but I wouldn't let them. I told them I'd run away if they did, and they were going to go to the police and go to Child Protective Services for me. But we had already had Child Protection Services intervention. My parents were arrested and busted on child abuse charges, and nothing was done. And I thought, if I end up in foster care, I'm just going to hit the streets. And they knew I was serious, so they were like, well, shit, at least we can try to help her, in this situation, right? So I actually made them not pursue trying to get me help, right? So they wanted to, right? But the thing is they were very helpful to me, and they did a lot of nice things for me. And they moved away when I was about just turning 15. But they were very helpful to me, and I'll never forget what they said to me. I'll never forget what they said to me. These words that were so... I didn't think they were that big of a deal, right? But they stayed with me, right? It really kind of helped me through my life. And, we have to want to do what's best for ourselves. We have to want to do the right things by ourselves, especially if you were abused and nobody did the right things by you. Maybe you weren't abused. Maybe you just had parents who just weren't around, which is actually abuse, right? A lot of people don't really realize that. It's called abandonment. Child abuse is child abandonment, and even if there's no physical abuse involved, it's child abandonment. It's like a parent who's not there. People don't realize that these things are actually abuse, right? It's hard on people, and so whatever it is in your life, you have to want to make those decisions. You have to be like, okay, I want change. That's where I was, and I literally had to tell my friends goodbye because I knew that I'd be getting high with them. I knew that the next time I saw my friend, they would be passing around the coke or passing around the doobs or passing around the crystal meth, and I would do it, right? I hung around with them for a little while and maintained to the point of just smoking joints with them because I was working on getting off these drugs, right? But the thing is her boyfriend was so violent, I decided I couldn't take it anymore. I'm like, you know what, that's it. I'm done with this shit. And I told my friend goodbye. And that's really the only way that I could actually get off of them, because I had to sit, at home. I had to sit in my place with no drugs, And believe me, I searched every nook and cranny of my closets, my drawers, bags, purses, you name it, looking for remnants of drugs. And I found some here and there, right? It's like, mirrors and razors and shit like that with a little bit of coke on it. I found a lot of stuff like that, but I finally went through all of it and it was gone. And I was like, okay, I'm doing this. It was a determination, but I lost my friends in the process. And I basically gained my life in the process. So I had to say goodbye to my friends, which I love them very much, and they know I do. But I had to do it for me to stay alive, right? And it was hard, right? It was very hard, but I did it. There were many times I wanted to use drugs after that because horrible things would happen. I smoked the odd joint here and there, but I never ever used drugs again. And, it's hard. It is hard, but it's the best decision that I ever made for myself, really, because it allowed me to clear my mind, get myself straightened up. I mean, I was working the whole time I was doing drugs. I had 2 or 3 jobs. That's how I paid for them, because I didn't want to steal for drugs. I was like, no. I used to just be high all the time. So the people that I work with, I never had jobs where I'd have drug tests. They just thought that's how I was. They didn't realize. They didn't know that I was high all the time, right? I mean, I'm sure that some of them might have, right? But for the most part, I think they thought it was just kind of fucking crazy, right? And I think most of them were high too, right? Or on drugs or whatever, I'm sure of it. That was a major drug culture years back in them days. So anyway, I got myself straightened up that way, and then I didn't do any work on the child abuse stuff, right? None. And life didn't just get better from that point, right? And you can go through, if you want to watch my Born in Hell series, where I talked about that. It's not like, oh, it was just so much better, right? No. Things didn't get better. That's why I hit rock bottom at the age of 41, right? Not even using drugs or drinking alcohol. I just had a mental, maybe it was a mental breakdown, but whatever it was, I hit rock bottom. And I couldn't do anything, until I dealt with the shit, right? And I knew it was going to continue on, and I was going to continue spiraling on into oblivion until I killed myself and I got myself out of this place. Unless I dealt with the shit, right? All that horrible stuff that had been plaguing me, where I kept saying, I'm fine. Trauma survivors, abuse survivors will often tell you they're fine. People who are depressed will tell you they're fine, right? There's a whole big thing about Robin Williams telling everybody he was fine when he really wasn't. Many times, most people who claim that, who commit suicide don't tell anybody. They just do it, right? The warning signs aren't always there that a person is struggling, right? Many times people are, like, I was a highly functioning trauma survivor, right? I could do jobs, no problem. And then go out and have a few drinks with people or whatever. I mean, I don't really drink that much, but we go out and have a drink or whatever. And then come home and then sit on the couch and want to end my life. And I'd be like, well, yeah, life isn't so bad right now. But it's this pain, this untreated pain from my past that is just still destroying my life, right? Up until that point, I really had to do a lot of work to get better, right? To where I could handle even thinking about staying alive, right? And doing life, right? So, you have to make those decisions, those really good decisions for yourself. You have to want to live. You have to want to have a better life, right? And you have to make those decisions. Nobody can do it for you, like I said. Then you have to be willing to do the work, right? Because if you're not willing to do the fucking work, it's not gonna help. And you have to be like brutally honest with yourself. Do I really want to fucking do this, or do I not want to do this? Right? Am I going to get off the drugs, or am I just going to continue on, spiral down, and die? Or am I going to get off the alcohol, or am I just continue to do it and die? Or am I going to, get my life straightened up, or am I just going to continue to live this way and die? You can do that. No problem. But you can't blame anybody about it. You can't blame anybody for it later. It's your deal. From the time we become adults, we literally are responsible for our own lives. From the time you hit adult age, whatever age that is in your country, you make the decisions for your life. And you can't blame anybody else for your decisions. Certainly we have these wounds from the past, right? I can't blame my parents on my drug use. I really don't. I chose to do those drugs. Nobody forced them on me. I can't blame my parents that I didn't go get help, right? Cops were already involved. They knew about the abuse. We were already in the system, right? We were already red flagged as, victims of child abuse, right? So, all I would have had to do was go and start making noise about it to the cops, and I would have been removed from the home. So, I didn't do that because, like I said, I talked about it in my other ones, because my other siblings, if they stayed, and I got removed, would have never, ever, if I had talked to them ever again, would never have let me live that one down. They'd have been like, haha, yeah, you got removed. We got to stay, because Mom really hated you, And I would have never heard the end of it. And that would have always kind of eaten me up. That my mom my mom abused me a whole lot more than my other siblings, right? And I thought, no way. No way are those fuckers, that's not right. That's not okay. So I wanted to force her to look after me. Like, that was my main deal. I was like, you are going to do the right thing by me, which she never did. But the thing is like, in my mind, that's why I didn't try to get out, right? It was many reasons. Like I said, it wasn't just one reason or two reasons. It was a handful of reasons why I didn't. I'm kind of kicking myself now, right? And I'm thinking, why did I allow her to treat me like that? Like, why did I stay? I wouldn't have been able to stop her from doing what she was doing. She was way too big and strong for me. My choice would have been to leave, right? So I thought, why did I stay where it was not wanted? When my siblings didn't care, they didn't give a shit. Obviously my siblings did not love me. I just, there was no love in my home, right? And my siblings were just kind of just as nasty and abusive as her. They just weren't as violent, but they were a little bit violent, towards me. But why do people do these things, right? Why do people just pick on the little one who's sort of the helpless one who comes along? I was the youngest by quite a few years. My sister was 5.5 years older than me. My brother was 7 years older than me. They were the two youngest siblings next to me in the home still. And my other brother, who sexually abused me, was 13 years older than me. And he was just so high and so fucked up and so evil, right? That dude. Yeah, he really was, man. He was fucking evil, creepy. And my brother Rob, he's the one that sexually abused me. My brother Chess is the one that was killed. He was murdered. I kind of think my brother Rob did it. Either that or my dad, one or the other. I kind of, part of me thinks that one of my family members killed my brother. And because the situation behind it. So it's all in Born in Hell, like, if you ever really want to check all that stuff out. It's lengthy, 27 hours of listening to me going on, but I really get into the details of all this stuff, right? But anyway, why do we make these choices, right? I felt like I needed to, first of all, be in her face and force her to take responsibility for me, because she popped me out, man. You know what I mean? Like, I was C-section, so she really didn't give, I wasn't a normal birth, because she was in a coma when I was born, right? Because she was abused by my dad. First of all, I'm a rape child, right? And I was born out of marital rape, and then my dad was beating on her, and this whole time I was in the womb, he was beating on her, and then she ended up in a coma. They had to take me out. She did eventually wake up, and she hated my guts. You know what I mean? And I was just this cute little thing, I think, I see pictures of myself from them, and I think, God, I was just this cute little girl. Just another cute little kid. I just think kids are cute, right? And it's like, she was like, what the fuck? Now I got another one to deal with. This is, rape child number 9. 2 of them didn't make it. 2 of my siblings, between myself and my other sister, did not make it. So people would say, Jesus Christ, what, and are you upset that you made it? I've actually had people ask me, are you sad that you weren't one of those kids that were, that didn't make it, that were born stillborn? because there were two that looked probably just like me. Honest to God, they were stillborn and they were fully formed, right? Um, it's kind of like that would be to say that um, should I never have been born? I have thought about that before, and people would say, well, you have such a shit fucking life. Wouldn't that be better? No, because I enjoy life beyond. I mean, yesterday I said I hate life, but actually I have an aversion to life, of this life for me. I don't have an aversion to life itself. I have an aversion to what's happened to me and how pissed off I am about it. And other people that I know, not just me, but especially me. It does really piss me off. I wanted to have children, right? And I would have had children had it not been for being sexually abused as a child, right? So, there's lots of things, right? And the fact that I don't do relationships. I can't have any friends around me because I just don't do relationships. And so it's lonely and it's hard, right? But the thing is I also have I have another part of me that says, this life is so precious because it's a gift from God. It doesn't matter whether you believe in God or not. I do, right? I don't care if you believe in God. That makes no difference to me. The issue is that I do believe in God. And this life is this precious gift. And I believe that God did not want any of this for me. And unfortunately, this is man's choices. These are man's decisions. It's like my dad used to blame the devil. My dad used to blame the devil. He'd be like, the devil made me do it because he was beating on my mom. Like he would hit her with furniture. He would beat her, And my brothers would be trying to get him away from her. And he beat on them. In the meantime, the house is fucking trashed. And it's like, I'd be sitting there on the couch watching all this just going, I hope none of that shit fucking comes over here and hits me. You know what I mean? That's what I'd be thinking. I'm like, this is gonna fucking hurt if that fucking desk comes over here flying over on me. It's like, not really even concerned about my poor mother being beaten and battered by a man and then having shit thrown at her from across the room. Well, that's what she did to me, right? I was just a mirror for, everything that he was doing to her, she was doing to me. And she allowed my brother to rape me. She didn't tell him. I don't think she said, go in and you can rape Lori, no problem. She knew about it and did nothing to stop it, right? So I know that God did not want that for me. Because when I look at his creation, and I look at the fact that we are capable of love, mankind is capable of love. We just choose not to. Love is a wonderful thing. And, people would say, what do you know about love? I mean, I've had good friends who I really loved and they loved me. And I've had relationships that people loved me. My husband loved me. For real. Real love. That was wonderful. Those things are special and I wouldn't trade. I wouldn't trade anything to change anything if it meant that I couldn't have those 23 years with my husband. So I believe that there's special moments in life that are worth living for. There's special things in life that are worth living for, right? And when I see God's creation and I think about all the beautiful things I've seen in my lifetime. I've been very blessed to be able to travel as a poor person. I've been poor all my life, but I managed to see most of the United States and Ireland and a lot of Canada and Hawaii. And I'm poor. So it just tells you, I got to see a lot of places as a poor person. And I got to see God's creation. A lot of it. That makes it worth it. To look up at the stars, to think about all those really interesting, beautiful thoughts. That's what it is to be a human being on this planet. So, no, of course, I'm glad to be here, right? But what I hate is all of this evil. I hate all of this evil and abuse and horror. And it's not okay what people are doing. It's not okay what people are doing to each other. It's not okay what people are doing to themselves. It's not what God intended for us, right? So, you have to make the right decisions for yourself today, whatever that is, If you want to have a better life, if you want to see change in your life, then you've got to get yourself on that road to a better life, right? And that's all there is to it. It's like me, I griped about being homeless yesterday. I mean, I'm going to go through the channels. I'm waiting until at the end of July because I've actually got, I worked for a while and saved up a bunch of money, so I'm not, I just can't spend any money because it's for rent, right, and bills. But the thing is, I've only got till the fall. And if the person who owns this suite decides to sell, I won't be able to move. So I'm sitting on a bit of a precipice, right? So the thing is like, I'm going to go through the channels. I'm not going to just allow myself to just go down for no reason, obviously. I'm going to make the best decisions for myself, right? I don't like it. I don't want to be on welfare, It pisses me off. I'm going to try to get a job first of all. If I can't get a job, then I'm going to have to go on welfare. There's no choice, right? If you can't get a job, I can't go live off of people. I don't even know people I can live off of, you know what I'm saying? And would I do that anyway? No. That's just not the right thing to do. So what I'm going to do is, if I can't get a job, then I'm going to hit up the federal government first, because you have to. And the federal government turns me down, then I can wander down to the local government and sit there and be one of these people that they, sit there and basically mistreat you in the office, making you feel like a piece of shit, right? As if I don't already feel like a piece of shit, right? So this is what I'm not looking forward to. I've always been able to work and maintain my life. I've never been interested in too much money, so I never go for the millions. I like a simple little life, And it's like, I'll probably end up on welfare, right? I may end up in a shelter for a little while because housing is difficult, right, to get. Eventually I'll probably get into a little apartment somewhere. So things won't be bad for, eventually it'll all be squared away if I live that long, right? If any of us live that long. Now with the people threatening nukes all the time, we're just never really sure. But the thing is all I can tell you is that, back to our topic of making the right decisions for yourself, my brothers had opportunities to make the right decisions for themselves, right? The two brothers that killed themselves, they were drug users and they were in their 30s, and they had so many people stepping in to try to help them. They had whole communities of people here in Calgary trying to help them. And they'd end up in prison, they were, quite often in shelters or living on the street, eating out of dumpsters. Both of them not together, separately. It's like they could have made better decision for themselves, but I think something in there, something told them that there's no hope, right? That's my brothers who grew up in the same home I did, that I watched my dad kicking their asses on a daily basis, or at least every other day. At least it was a weekly event for sure. Always usually on a Friday night and every Sunday. So it was at least 2 days you could guarantee that there'd be some shit going down. And sometimes, Mondays, Tuesdays, just depend what's going on in the home. So, this was a regular event in my house, right? And my brothers, they would have to get my dad away from my mother because he'd be raping her, right? Because she'd be fighting him off. And, Just terrible, terrible shit. Then they'd have to go save my dad because he'd be running down the street trying to kill himself. Down the freeway. Not the street, but he'd go running down the freeway naked trying to get hit by semis and stuff. And, they'd have to go get him, pull him off the freeway, bring him home. Their abuser. They were probably like, why don't we just let him fucking get hit? I'm sure, they were teenagers. I'm sure they were probably sitting there going, what the fuck? He kicks our ass, beats our ass, he's fucking crazy, and we gotta go save his ass, right? But they did. And, it's like, that's what they lived through. And then my mother was beating on them with brooms, and she was abusive to them too. My mother was a big woman. She was almost 6 feet tall. Actually, I think she was 6 feet tall. So she's 5'11" or something. And she was a big woman, man. And my dad was huge. The two of them, when they went at it, it was really bad news. And she could beat up my brothers very easily, And she could really kick my ass because I was a lot smaller, let me tell you. So the thing is my brothers, something in them just didn't, there was just no hope, right? If you want to, I do talk a lot about my brothers and the situations that they went through in the Born in Hell video series. I actually went into real detail there. Some of it's in my books as well, but there's a lot more detail in the Born in Hell series. So they lost out. They're gone. They never got the chance to meet the perfect woman for them or the perfect guy or whatever, They never got the chance to meet that lover, right, that they could spend years with and have a wonderful time together and appreciate that time, right? They never got to do any of that. And they had no hope, I guess, in their heart. They had no belief that life was worth living. And that's the difference between them and me. And I get down too, right? But there's always this little thing that says, no, we have to keep going, right? We have to keep going. And I think what it is, it's an inner strength. It's an inner fire within me that says, you know what, I'm winning this fight. I think what it is I'm just damn stubborn. That's all there is to it. I'm just stubborn, and I don't care, It's like, I made my mind up, that's it. I'm like a dog with a bone, man. And, I made my mind up to live, regardless of how hard it gets, regardless of how bad it gets, right? And that's what I'm doing. I'm sticking it out. So that's what I'm telling you. And you have to make those good decisions for yourself, right? To get yourself, if you're listening to this and you're a person who's struggling with addiction or any type of thing like that, and you're just, it's your decision you have to make. The right decision for yourself, right? To have a good life. And it shouldn't be for somebody else. It should be for you, right? Like a lot of people are like always, oh, I need to do this for somebody else, my family, or I need to do this for, and you need to do it for you, man. Because that's the only way it's going to work. That's the only way it's going to stick. If you do it for somebody else, it doesn't stick. But if you do it for you, it does stick. Because I was able to stay off the drugs. There's been many times that I wish I could have drugs. I can go buy pot down the street. It's legal now, no problem. I actually don't like it anymore because it's all that modification stuff, and I don't really like it. I used to like the old stuff, like the real stuff that wasn't messed around with by the government. But anyway, I'm not into drugs anymore. Like, I'm just doing life with coffee and nicotine, and I'm getting off the nicotine because I'm working on using a vape thing, like a vaporizer, liquid nicotine, and I'm getting off of it because it's too expensive. That's really why. And the coffee, I'm just kind of cutting down because I can't sleep anymore at all, ever. I'm like, I guess I should kind of cut down the caffeine. And I'll probably maybe still be able to afford a coffee here and there. But the thing is I am trying to kind of get off of that shit too. So, I'm not doing drugs anymore. I just don't, right? And I'm myself. I'm me. I don't need drugs. I don't need those drugs anymore. You know why? Because I learned how to do life with me, just me. And at the end of the day, man, we have to be okay with ourselves, right? At the end of the day, we have to, when we lay down our head wherever we're going to lay our head down today, at the end of the day when we're going to go to sleep, the only thing we really have is ourselves. And we have to be okay with ourselves, right? Tomorrow's not promised, man. You know? So at the end of the day, we have to be okay with our life and with ourselves. And I had to learn how to do that. You know, I had all kinds of problems from the abuse. You know, hated my skin. I hated being in my skin. I hated being a woman. I hated being anything. Right? I didn't want to be anything. Like, you know, I'm really screwed up from this abuse, you know. And it took me years of really doing the homework and really doing the program and really sticking with the different programs to get where I am today, right? And so I'm telling you, if you want change, you're the only one that can do it. If you want to have a better life, if you want to feel better, if you want to have a better opportunity at life, you know, and make these better decisions, the only one who can do it for you is you, right? Nobody else can do it for you. So that's why I'm here as this person just shouting out and saying, you know what? If you want to live, you're the only one that can do that, right? So I want you to stick around, but you have to want to stick around for you, right? Take care, everybody. I hope you have a wonderful day.